Perfect. No stress.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the latest community conversation from the Anticipation Hub. And today the Climate Centre are going to be talking to us about positive anticipatory action. And so I'll hand over to our hosts, that's Dorothy and Rebecca. And yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Tim. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dorothy Heinrich from the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Centre. And I'm here with colleagues Rebecca, who most of you probably know, and Emma Mwangi as well. So we're three of us are kind of hosting this very short, very informal community conversation. We basically just wanted to talk to you a little bit about this idea we've been exploring at the Climate Centre, an idea that's not new, but that we think may be deserving of some more conversation, some more discussion and work. And so we're curious to hear what you think and if you have any ideas you want to share. So we're going to do this over an hour. I think technically this was slotted for an hour and 15, but no, you're all very busy. So we give you 15 minutes back of your day, hopefully, unless you have fascinating conversations and you don't want to leave. So we do have until 15 after the hour. And the goal of today is really just to chat about this idea, to exchange some thoughts that we've been having, but mostly hear from you. Most of you, I think, looking through the names, are all working on anticipatory action, on FBF, both in theory and in practice. And so we want to hear from you about this idea that we've been discussing internally and figure out, is this something that's worth pursuing? And if so, how? So maybe I will share my screen and show you this beautiful PowerPoint that Rebecca put together. For a bit of context, Rebecca's here taking visual notes at the same time. For those of you who don't know Rebecca's visual notes, you're in for a treat. The idea is that she'll be able to kind of record some of the thoughts that have been shared, and we'll share the notes at the end. So please do feel free to unmute your microphones, make use of the chat, really interrupt. I think we're a small group today, which is always really nice. And Pablo in the room here always says that the people who are here are the ones who are meant to be. So thank you for joining. If you want to put if you don't all know each other, if you want to put your names, organizations in the chat. And we're also trying to make a little kind of reading list at the Climate Centre, kind of a little book club. And we're always looking for more books. So if you're keen on telling us what you're reading right now, so name, introduction, what are you reading right now? It can be a trashy magazine, it doesn't matter. Just tell us what you're reading. We're keen to hear as well. Should I maybe get started and maybe quickly let Rebecca and Emma introduce themselves as well? Rebecca, can I give you the mic?
That sounds great, Dorothy. Thanks for that great introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm with the Climate Centre also. I'll be taking visual notes here on my iPad, and we'll share these out with you after the fact, along with hopefully a recording. Let's see. So what am I reading? I'm reading a few books right now. One is by an author named Temple Grandin, and it's on visual information. And interestingly, it's about what is visual thinking. And I'm a visual thinker, and it's thought that about 50% of the population thinks visually, but our world is very much a verbal world. So here I am creating a visual thinking aid today to help with our sharing and learning after the fact. And with that, I'll pass it over to Emma. Emma, maybe you can share with us what you're reading and where you're at.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. My name is Emma Mwangi, currently PhD student at the University of Sussex, and also working from time to time with the Climate Centre on such great ideas on where do we move anticipatory action. And the reason is because before I came over to the UK, I was also heavily involved in anticipatory action within the Kenyan context. Then what am I reading currently? I think as you grow older, you start wanting to know who you are and where you're headed. So I'm reading something by Oprah. It's named What I Know for Sure. Just wanting to reflect as I grow older and figure out where next and where to. Thank you. Back to you, Dorothy.
Thanks so much, Emma. And yep, I see some people putting names, organizations, and reading suggestions in the chat. Please do, everyone. It's nice to hear people around here. Great. So should we get started maybe? Again, super informal, there's only 20 of us, so let's talk. Here's the idea of today. Hopefully these slides work. We're going to have just a quick intro about what we mean by positive anticipatory action. It's kind of a term that we've been trying to float around, seeing if it sticks. But what exactly do we mean, and what why are we trying to talk about this today? We're then very lucky to be joined by a couple of people, I think, from Kenya Red Cross. Who are going to tell us about their experience working with these types of concepts. We're hopefully going to have a quick 15-minute kind of breakout group conversation about these ideas and what you'd like to see come out of this meeting. Gonna have some quick share back, a bit of a rant activity for those of you who know it. For those of you who don't, stay tuned. And a final conversation about, well, where do we go from here as we go into the end of the year and into thinking and planning for 2023. Does that sound all right? Okay. Oh, and I can't really see anyone, so if anyone wants to unmute your microphones, please do. I don't have visuals on you guys, so go ahead. So okay, so first question, what is positive anticipatory action and why on earth are we talking about it today? So we know that anticipatory action, forecast-based financing, however you want to call it and define it, has been pushing a shift in mindset within the humanitarian sector and beyond. The whole goal is that we're shifting from reactive approaches to disaster risk management to anticipatory or to proactive responses. And the whole goal here is that, or the whole message is that we want to be using climate and weather information at different timescales to make decisions. So whereby traditionally anticipatory action, in the last 10 years, anticipatory action has been defined by, here we've got actions or steps taken from people before disaster strikes based on early warnings or forecasts. If you look at the World Disaster Report, the definition is much longer, but essentially that's the idea. However, most of what we've been doing has been using early warnings of hazards or forecasts of negative or of bad seasons or events to act in advance. The weather's not always bad. Seasons are not always dramatic. Seasons are not always dangerous. And forecasts can actually be good forecasts sometimes. Some of the material that's produced by these products can actually be very useful, not only to warn of an impending hazard, but also to warn of an impending good moment in, for example, an agricultural calendar. So the whole goal is to see whether we can truly promote this shift in mindsets from reactive to proactive by also using climate and weather information of good seasons, of good moments, to basically increase populations, communities, individuals' resilience to future shocks. So how do I, as a person, or do we as a community, use information of good moments to come to increase our resilience to the future ones, to the future shocks themselves? And so first of all, can we forecast these, and what actually would we do? So that's the whole point of talking about this today is if we do get, for example, a seasonal forecast of above average rainfall, for example, instead of a drought, what can we do as a community or as individuals? What can we do as the humanitarian sector? And do we have a role to play in responding to that kind of information? So this idea isn't new. You'll hear, I'm going to put Pablo on the spot in a couple of minutes to talk about the origins of forecast-based financing, how it was developed. And this idea of using the good seasons or the good moments has not always been, is not a new one. However, in the last couple of years, this really has not been at the forefront. And as we're entering, I guess, the 10th year since the first dialogue platform, we're thinking about how do we scale up anticipatory action, how do we extend it, and how do we truly promote this shift in the way that we do things. And the big question, I think, was on our minds for today, but more generally as well, is how do we actually do that? And is positive anticipatory action possibly one of these answers? So the goal of this community conversation is to define this term. If you don't agree with the positive anticipatory action terminology, feel free to tell us if you have a better idea. But the goal is, what exactly would this mean? and how's the idea emerged, and where is it ideally, where is it going, where do we want it to go as a community of practice? Identifying challenges and obstacles for this, and mapping possible paths forward to move it forward if we believe that it's a valuable thing for us to be exploring. And finally, the real big goal of this is to collect ideas and inputs from around the community of practice to help advance this conversation about what we do when we have forecasts of good years. I'm going to hand over now to Emma to lead a conversation with Kenya Red Cross, who's here right now, to kind of give us a sneak peek into what Kenya Red Cross is doing or has done in the past around this idea of positive anticipatory action. So we're going to hear from them about what they've done and what their experience with this idea has been, and hopefully will give us some ideas to move this forward. So Emma, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Dorothy, for that introduction of what the entire concept is and where I would see that progressing to. So this afternoon or evening, luckily we managed to get a hold of one of the societies that has been trying out the positive anticipatory action. And I'm going to be having a conversation with a person. Oscar, if you'd want to unmute and introduce yourself before we move on to the conversation.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Dorothy, for organizing all this. I'm Oscar Lino from Kenya Red Cross, and I'm a climate scientist, really bringing an understanding of climate risk information into normal programming and all that. Over, Emma.
Thank you very much, Oscar. I know one of the things that, yes, Kenya Red Cross has been embracing not only anticipatory action, but trying to integrate sort of an entire mind shift within the society's programming to really cushion the most vulnerable. And maybe one of the things I would ask you to sort of give us an insight about is when we talk about positive anticipatory action within Kenya Red Cross, how do you define these good seasons that can be used, to do positive anticipatory action, and also how is this idea of the good season communicated both internally and externally to communities and stakeholders? Over to you, Oscar.
Thank you, Emma. Quite interesting conversation. Just what we see also at Kenya Red Cross around these seasons is actually a good season can be a varied one. When you look at Kenya, we have these areas that are arid and some which are actually normal places in which quite a bit of rainfall can mean a lot. So it's quite context specific. What we have, for instance, as a good season in arid areas would be, for instance, slightly enhanced rainfall in which people can actually make good use of in terms of agriculture. We know that in Kenya, actually, agriculture is the engine of our economy, and really planting the agricultural produce that is viewed as a staple food. This is we are talking about maize, whose lifespan is a bit longer, and therefore you need rainfall that's well behaved through the season. So a normal season would be up to 3 months. So a season in which you at least have rainfall for more than up to 30 days, that would be a good season. And that's not exactly the case when you talk about areas that are where rainfall is a bit the norm. They usually receive a lot of rainfall. For instance, the Western Kenya area and Central Kenya area. These are areas in which, as long as you have some kind of slightly enhanced rainfall, you'd be seeing cases of flooding and all that. So a good season for them would not be talking about enhanced rainfall. But now, really, at programming level within Kenya Red Cross, we usually want to communicate this kind of risks that are likely to be seen within the season. And in here, we start internally by the climate team. We usually have a climate unit within Kenya Red Cross that usually sensitizes the organization about the season, how it's likely to look like whenever the mandated institution, in this case, Kenya Meteorological Department, issues a forecast. We disseminate that internally, and within that, we work with the regional teams and county teams. And then county teams, just to get the context and really disseminate this for them, so that we can work with them to understand the kind of specific expectations that the season might bring onto the ground. And in this case, once we've disseminated, we look at the three scenarios: the scenarios of normal rainfall, the scenarios of slightly enhanced rainfall, scenario of depressed rainfall. What does it mean in those specific areas? And then develop advisories with them, so that internally we have this contingency planning. I mean, readiness within as an organization. I mean, an understanding of what that season means to them. But also externally, here we work with the mandated institution at the same time. Really working with the Kenya Meteorological Department again to develop advisories and to disseminate that to communities. This one usually happens mainly through radios, but also social media in some instances, which we've seen does very well. People get to really engage well, but also organized community gatherings. They're called barazas. And here we have Kenya Meteorological Department person going into those barazas alongside a county person or a Kenya Red Cross person, and then there are some conventions with the communities. So that's what we see as a good season, in which everyone anticipates the kind of risks that are out there, but also takes advantage of the rainfall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. It's interesting to hear you say that, yes, the information or what would consider really to be a good season is very context specific, based on the livelihoods within areas, and also the risk information, who's at risk or who's exposed to this particular sort of expected good season or good parameters or conditions within the system. And also one good thing that you've mentioned is this work and collaboration with the channels through even the producers, that you don't move along with this to the communities, but work with the mandated institutions to the grassroots to be able to communicate this, and use a wide kind of channel, just to make sure that if you're not getting radio, then you're getting that other channel, maybe through the community barazas, as you said, the gatherings or something of the sort. But then moving on, we know that having information, I could today be told that for example, the crypto market is going to be collapsing, but then if I don't do anything about it, then tomorrow I'm caught unawares. So maybe the next question would be then, once you've defined this based on context, what actions are taken internally, and what actions do you then advise communities to take at their own level?
Thank you, Emma. Just as that goes along, to develop advisories, as we had indicated, these advisories actually go a long way to really support what the communities really want to do. What we've seen also in beginning internally, what we usually do is we have this kind of funding pots which we quite access through our disaster management unit. We are able to access quite some funds to support communities. In this case, a case example is 2015, which was an El Nino year. So El Nino year actually translates to a lot of rainfall to most parts of Kenya, and particularly for these arid and semi-arid areas. So it's a blessing for them. So in 2015, a case was when disaster management unit actually supported a county in Kenya called Kitui, distributing drought tolerant seeds and to communities. so that they can make use of the little rainfall to boost production of food. So so internally there's those programming, and actually this kind of programs, the climate unit keeps on updating and I mean with as new forecasts come along and down from seasonal information and to weekly information and all that, it's feeded. I mean, this is disseminated and to the disaster management unit, and they're able now to understand things like when exactly is an onset, and at that point some procurement, for instance, processes have to be done in to target well, so that these seeds are distributed in time and all that. But externally, is these advisories, which actually translate slowly. We are seeing that they're beginning to translate into actions. We've started seeing that communities actually take advantage of this advisories to take early actions, such as really plunging drought tolerant seeds. But also, we have also seen some years in which rainfall has not been as much, and that, of course, has translated to, I mean, the communities also preparing themselves quite differently. So the context is quite always different, but actually what we're seeing that is slowly people are taking advantage of advisory and early warning information to actually take actions, both internally and at community level.
Well, thank you very much, Oscar. I think one of the highlights for me is this ready, set, go kind of a system that you have internally, that you also continually update the information as new information, even within the good season, comes in. You're able to update that and get the society thinking, even with what's ongoing, what can be done with that information. But then thinking of the bigger picture now, I would want us to talk about the outcomes. What have you seen? I know the cases are not, they've not been really that scaled up, and they've not been going on for a long time. But then what have you seen so far, and what do the people joining this conversation, if they were to take up these initiatives, what would they envision to see in their areas of operation?
Thank you, Emma, for that question. What that ties up nicely, the fact that people are taking actions is actually an interesting idea, because it builds up into the long-term resilience. In this case, we see that, for instance, the case of 2015, actually at the moment in Kenya, we're talking about a very long dry spell in which rainfall has kept on failing. So it's only people who harvest well that have this kind of support back at home. Their food reserves are kept for quite a while. The people who, for instance, practice climate smart agriculture in this case, are able to take advantage of the little rains within the season. They're able to have these trenches which conserve moisture within the soil for quite a while, so that rainfall that happens once in a week and that happens maybe 2 weeks of rainfall, and this only translates to 3 days of rainfall. That kind of rainfall can sustain crops which can do which can do quickly and take advantage of that little moisture. So by the end of the day, we are seeing that slowly this building resilience at community level, and it's what even here as we speak would like to advocate for, like all stakeholders interested in this case in anticipatory action coming. Start appreciating the value of actually the building resilience through positive anticipatory action.
Thank you very much, Oscar. I think you're giving the people in the call hope that yes, there is a positive outcome, and positive anticipatory action can really needs to be done to improve people's resilience. But before I let you go or come to the questions on the chat, because I see someone raising a few questions, I would want to put you on the spot, because we've talked about the positives, yeah? You're telling me this works, just like someone would tell me maybe this particular forex trading works or something works, but then they're not telling me what challenge might I face. And I want to put you on the spot and ask you, what's one of the challenges that people who start this might face, something that you faced?
I would use the one word answer to that: resources. That is the main conversation we should be having, actually.
Interesting that that comes up, that yes, even as we think about doing this, then resources might be a challenge. And I'm hoping that's a conversation that Dorothy, we come back to a little later, start looking at, even with that good conversation from Oscar, what are some of the challenges and how can we pull our efforts to overcome those. And I want to pick on someone on the chat. I don't know if you're still with us, Janato. If you're still here, say hello. I don't know if...
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much. Yes, this is
Sorry, I would you kindly be okay with just asking Oscar the questions directly?
Yes. So Oscar, I was thinking at all of the different ways that harnessing, the power of information in a forecast could be used with, very decentralized advisories. You started by, talking about how different parts of the country, maybe excess rainfall, might be good, up in, I don't know, the northeast part of the country and, around the lake region, then it's going to trigger flooding. But in terms of how to make the best use of the anticipated conditions, I'm wondering if you're talking about, agro-hydrometeorological forecasting and trying to, move the country in that direction of advisories that are very tailored to, specific agricultural use. So it would need to be looking at the growing season for specific crops. In a way, it requires a lot of anticipatory action, which is actually socializing people that, remember, your grandparents, they didn't all grow maize, that there are other things, that we have traditionally grown. Maybe we think we don't like them, but if, in the climate that we're in, we need to learn how to, how to tailor what we plant to what will do well to give us not just, enough to get by this season, but to, to develop a broader expertise so that, the knowledge begins to build, within the farmers, within the extension services, to be much more flexible in terms of the decisions that are made about planting specific crops. I'm wondering your thoughts on all that.
Great. It's an interesting thought into this. Actually, at the moment, what we see is a meteorological focus. I mean, focus that tell us something about a meteorological drought. This is the rainfall focus information. But of course, there has been there are already ongoing attempts to actually try and look at all this from different lenses. This is when we are also having these conditions of some kind of an agricultural drought and all that. But actually, there's need for us to appreciate the fact that all this, what we see as practitioners, also is lack of rainfall is actually the major driver to most of what we see, and in this case, we try to tailor that nicely in terms of advisories, really working with the communities and also stakeholders who apply differently. They bring together conversations of, for instance, some level of rainfall. What does it mean on ground? And then they'll be telling you, for instance, there's this a crop variety, for instance, a cowpeas that can take advantage of this amount of rainfall or this number of days with rainfall to give people some kind of a produce. Maybe sorghum and all that. And this is what Kenya Red Cross, as practitioners, what we like harnessing. I mean, really working with the management institutions based on their capacities. I mean, what they can produce at the moment to tailor it nicely again with the communities, what they also understand, because we also want that whenever you give a community a seed to plant, that person actually will willingly plant that seed and will not imagine that this is a new practice you are bringing on board. But actually, it's about also working with them so that they understand that this time round, these are the risks. So please work within this kind of time, make use of this kind of agricultural technologies and all that. So I think slowly, with a lot of researchers coming in, the space is opening up onto more conversations, but also I would like that this kind of skills are being built at producer information producer level, so that all this is tied up nicely.
Thank you very, very much, Oscar and Janato, for that important question that leads back to the beginning when Oscar said it's very context specific. It's a deep understanding of each particular context, what really for them means, what a good season for them really means. And also something that Oscar pointed is this collaboration amongst stakeholders, because with that information, then the agriculture person also comes in, or the hydro person comes in and interprets that even a little further. And I would like to end there with this conversation with Oscar, and I thank him very much for setting the ground for us. And hopefully we continue seeing much more of these cases from Kenya Red Cross documented and shared around for learning. Back to you, Dorothy.
Thank you so much, Emma and Oscar. Thank you so much for being with us. I think I was listening to you talk, and I think it brings together so many elements of what really we're trying to do with this whole concept of acting in anticipation. And I hear the challenges and the complexities, and particularly in the context specificity, and I wonder what the solutions to that are. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And I think, yeah. And then this question of how as well anticipatory action or forecast-based financing is contributing or hindering resilience, I think came up a lot in what you were saying. And I know it's a big question that we've been asking internally as well. So thank you for sharing. And Jano, thank you for your question too. I kind of want to encourage everyone to put questions in the chat and unmute your microphones if there's anything you would like to say. And actually, while I'm at it, while I have the mic, I wondered, Pablo, if I could put you on the spot actually, and Jano, feel free to jump in as well. And anyone who was there at the very beginnings of the kind of FBF journey. Pablo, you and I were chatting a little bit with the others, and I was talking with Megan as well about this concept that isn't new, right? That this question of using good seasons is not something that we've invented in 2023. These are conversations that you did have in the original iterations of FBF. And I think Megan said there was something about calling it FBF for posterity, if that rings a bell for anyone. Pablo, Jano, and others, I wondered, whoever wants to self-select here, if I could put people on the spot and ask, what was the origins of this idea, and what happened? Why was this not kind of promoted as an idea to take forward? Why the decision, and what happened, and what your thoughts on what Oscar was saying and on this idea are at this moment?
Thank you. Hello, friends. I hope you can hear me and see me. So yes, the origins of anticipatory action for prosperity could, at a minimum, be traced back to 2,000-3,000 years ago, when the Egyptians, the pharaohs, had systems, bureaucratic systems in place to not only invite, but in certain ways stimulate, if not mandate, the planning for future planting right after the floods had peaked, and take advantage of the fertile soil with moisture on the Nile River basin. It has been a no-brainer that if you can look at the stars or look at anything else in nature that tells you what is likely to happen next, and you can take opportunity of it, do it. What I think, to your question, Dorothy, we in the humanitarian sector have a mindset of superheroes who go help those who are in trouble right after they've suffered. And there's a lot that could be done, learning from lots of others, from the pharaohs in Egypt to the private sector, to take advantage of opportunity. Here's a link to outside of my Red Cross life when I was supporting the World Bank in looking at how to integrate financial incentives for subsistence farmers in Malawi to get bumper harvest seeds in anticipation of good rains. And that was bundling loans with insurance and so on. I think one reason why in our sector we haven't embarked too much in this is that the pursuit of prosperity doesn't sound like humanitarian work, it sounds like development. I would argue very strongly that humanitarian results can be accomplished through opportunistic anticipatory action for prosperity, and therefore we should be thinking of opportunities for action based on forecast. But it requires us to think about incentive structures. What happens if the harvest is so good that people don't have storage, which was one of the issues in the very cool project in Kenya with funding from Islamic financing from Malaysia. There's so much we can and should do, but it requires, as you framed in this event, a change of mindset. I hope that we can recognize that given the changing climate, given the change in geopolitics, given urbanization and so on, we cannot keep up by just dealing with the trouble, fast, ongoing, or upcoming. We also have to build the foundations for well-being, for oomph. And the final comment I want to make is that it's also a phenomenal opportunity for recruitment of volunteers, for creating a vibe of positivity if the Red Cross and partners in the Anticipation Hub and beyond started seeing anticipatory action as, yeah, let's celebrate the goodness that's coming and let's be ready for that goodness so that in future trouble, we're starting from a better place. Jano, maybe you want to complement?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so I wanted to contribute some of the big picture thinking that was going on back then when Pablo was involved in the bank experiment, basically looking at rainfall insurance. Malawi was a huge learning opportunity. And I think, a very significant takeaway was that the market is going to always tend to move to the middle. So it made it very clear that the most vulnerable farmers were not a good market for insurance companies. So, it would require some kind of policy intervention to ensure the inclusion of the most vulnerable within any kind of a national insurance scheme, if it was to benefit the most vulnerable. And that's kind of interesting because there's sort of a connection to things that were going on. I pasted a link in the chat to current work in Mali. But going back to the 1980s, USAID did a pretty exhaustive study of the state of, or the capability for agro-hydrometeorological forecasting in Mali. And the capability was actually quite sophisticated, well developed in Mali's Meteo Mali, in their National Weather Service. But the disconnect was getting that information to people, and it's a lot more complex. It's it's sociological questions. As we were talking about, this everything is place-based. It all has to do with local context. So the uptake of information doesn't happen by magic. You can't just push it out over radio or even cell broadcast and expect people to make the best use of the best available information. There has to be an engagement process, and fundamentally people need to trust the information to actually use it. But in the big picture, we had been talking. I was at that time back in the 2000s. I was with the Global Environment Facility. And I was very interested in the use of forecast information for multiple sectors at the scale of the catchment basin, which would be the river basin and also including the groundwater resources, because I was working in the international water portfolio. And we were discussing kind of this idea of using insurance or weather insurance as a way to manage risk, to manage the extremes that we were anticipating in the context of a changing climate, but how to do that in a larger context of large-scale environmental management. So really looking at this concept that, that wetlands has kind of refined, looking at the river systems as these blue lifelines, essentially in a dry land environment. And when you look at water, not just as rainfall or as river water, we talk about, the agricultural, hydrological, and meteorological drought. I mean, it's very important that we understand those concepts, but the larger concept is that water is actually a living system, and our human intervention in the environment actually affects our microclimate. And at that level, we can restore a healthy climate by large-scale management, appropriate management of our water systems as living systems. So we were talking about, for example, looking at some of the big African basins, at the Niger Basin, and I actually had managed to put, I had an agreement from UNDP to put $300,000 or $400,000 into a regional river basin project with the West African large river basin. So that would have been Senegal, Volta, and Niger rivers, to look at the idea of how to balance flood and drought, including insurance potentially as a financial mechanism, and how that could be used to essentially, build not just food security, but all of the different kinds of benefits in different sectors that were related to integrated water management, river basin management. And it's just interesting that the person in UNDP at that time was Yannick Glemarek, who's now, has been head of the Green Climate Fund for some time. For various reasons, the project didn't go forward, but I just wanted to share with you that, that these markers in the thought around anticipatory action, making more use of forecasts and at a much broader scale than just disaster management, those seeds have been planted. And during PFR, I tried to kind of close that circle a little bit. And we actually had extremely productive engagement with Haiti Red Cross, with the Environment Ministry. The current environment minister is the former climate negotiator who wrote all the NDCs, for Haiti. Yes, Haiti is a poster child for, failed state, having, some of the most difficult political, economic, and social conditions on the planet right now. But the astonishing thing is that people have actually been dedicated to this agenda. These are the technical experts who have stayed in the ministries, who haven't left the country, who are extremely excited about the vision of a future where we're bringing all these, weaving all these threads together. And we actually prepared the Green Pearl project for Haiti with Common Land, with Netherlands Red Cross, that tries to put forecast-based action into this larger context of basin scale, or you could say, water catchment scale, productive management. And so that, that really, as Pablo was saying, it's a climate resilient development agenda, and that essentially, that's where the humanitarian sector needs to be positioning itself in the context of a changing climate. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Pablo. Honestly, listening to you guys speak, and I think it's always fascinating to hear the genealogy of ideas and understand, how have we gotten, to where we are now. And you hear the memory in the stuff that you're saying and the big conversations that have been happening, in the last 20 years around this subject. And I think to hear you kind of draw that genealogy a little bit and say, yeah, this is what we tried, and here's maybe where this is going, it makes me think a lot about the conversations that we've been having about where anticipatory action fits in the disaster risk management continuum, and really what are we trying to do, and how do we articulate where it fits, and how then is it contributing or not to long-term resilience. And I think I'm gonna have to sit with my notes for a long time about what you were saying, but I think that's part of the big question that we're asking here. It's really this question of how does this approach fit? Where does this approach fit, and how is it contributing to resilience, and what tools do we have to actually do that, and whose mandate is it, and where? I think there's a lot of richness in what you both shared, so thank you. And I promise everyone this was not rehearsed. This was really, last minute putting them on the spot, so really appreciate it. Thank you. We were going to put you in breakout groups, but Zoom is misbehaving, so nobody's going into awkward breakout groups, which some of you may be celebrating. But maybe we have, sorry, I'm looking at the time. We have about 15 minutes left. We don't have that much more to share. We kind of wanted to do a bit of a wrap up. So we wanted to hear more from you guys about what do you think about this idea? What ideas has this been sparking? So yeah, if anyone's comfortable unmuting your microphones and saying just what you're thinking, it would be really nice to hear. And I think I just see the names here. I know there's a lot of expertise here on these questions. So please do come in. Bettina always says to count to 7 before you keep talking, so I'm going to count to 7 in my head until someone starts in.
Dorothy, I think Bettina says count to 8. And I just wanted to say that it depends on how you count. And also we can have a chance for discussion after the next activity too, if there's no one who wants to share after you count to 8 or 7.
There's sort of another lens on the big picture that I wanted to share with you. So I love, it was maybe not even originally his statement, but Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, said, "Never waste a crisis." And I think the message that has stuck with me is that any crisis that we face is actually, it's a moment of heightened opportunity. And if you have a plan, if you have, let's say, a policy intervention that you've been struggling, I don't know, where I've been working in the Caribbean now, for, I don't know, the last, 5 or 10 years. And one of the biggest obstacles is actually data sharing. I mean, it's data sharing, between government ministries, it's data sharing between countries. We can't build, a rainfall grid across the region unless every, country is contributing, and, it doesn't work. It doesn't allow us to go forward. And again, in this sort of big picture, we're on the brink of the big data era with, machine learning algorithms and things that can help us to solve our problems that must be data driven. And if we want to move on data policy, the time to do it is when you're in a moment of crisis, when you can demonstrate that if we had this data sharing, let's say, we're in look at the health pandemic. If we had that health surveillance information, and if we could combine it with other factors to actually anticipate where are the hot spots so that we could prepare people, prevent outbreaks. I mean, that's what we've been trying to do, with dengue, but we don't have enough granularity in the data. So what good is an early warning system if it just shows, the whole country goes red? We need to know, what parts of the country, because we have limited resources. So we'll never get there unless we get the cooperation at a much broader base. to be feeding that information into a model. So our models are maybe ahead of our policies, but it's, you know, like when you have a dengue outbreak, that's when you come to cabinet with the legislation that can move you a big step forward. So this idea of understanding, you know, of kind of harnessing risk by understanding when are the moments, you know, I mean, we could be stuck for years trying to move our little agenda up, you know, in government, but we might do better if we were patient and we know that there is going to be another crisis. We, you know, I mean, we know we don't have to wait more than a year. And at that moment, maybe we could strategically move things forward. So I just wanted to see how people feel about that.
Never waste a crisis, and wait for the window of opportunity. John, I'm curious how you would apply this to this question of positive anticipatory action and where those pressure points might be. Actually, we do have, if I skip forward in the slide, we do have a moment right after you guys talk about this to talk a little bit about a timeline. So maybe if we can circle back to this at the end and talk about when those key crisis moments might be. That would be brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. We have it's just, yeah, keeping an eye on the time. We have a bit of a rant that we wanted to test out with you guys. You've been listening to people talk very eloquently, I think, not including myself in this list, of this question of positive anticipatory action, and you know, that it is an idea that is not new, that it is an idea that we want to keep exploring, and that there have been a couple examples in the past of people trying this idea out. So a big question to you as experts in this community of practice is what issues and barriers do you foresee to create an enabling environment for this question of positive anticipatory action? What really are those issues and barriers? And I would extend this question a little bit for positive anticipatory action, but also for enabling the shift in mindset, which I think the positive anticipatory action points towards. So if I can ask Rebecca or Emma maybe to put in the chat the good games focus, which you all know at this point. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you can all navigate maybe to that link, you'll see a platform which I think most of you in this room are going to know. You have you've got the good games focus here. And the question really is, I think you've got 90 seconds to tell us what you think these barriers these barriers to positive anticipatory action might be. Can everyone access the link? And we'll give you guys 90 seconds to just write. For those of you who don't know the tool, you just type your ideas in and you press enter, and it'll create this long list of issues and barriers, which we'll then try to solve.
And try not to be too thoughtful about it. Just feel free to keep typing. Typos are fine. Just to see how much we can get in there in a little bit of time.
Yeah, this is great. And it's given to you in caps, so you can pretend that you're yelling and that you're not yelling into the void. There's some really nice ideas coming out here. Someone put, why is this so hard with an exclamation mark, which I think is quite good. Yeah, there's some really nice ideas here about funding, about the line between humanitarian and development work, thoughts about this change of mindsets, conceptual understandings, which is essential. Yeah, there's some, keep shouting, just put all your ideas in there. Some really people are asking some very poignant questions. I think I'm excited to show you. You've got 3 seconds. One last one. All right. Okay, we're done. So you just shouted a bunch of issues and barriers. And now the nice thing about this tool is that we're going to give you the opportunity to refine them and importantly to offer some solutions to the barriers that people suggested. So let's try here. If you see, you'll see the list of the issues that everyone has highlighted. All you need to do is click on the rant and you can put some solutions to fixing this barrier. So this is your opportunity to tell us what your bright ideas are. So it's easy, just click on the rant and then you can edit it in the box itself. And if you want to see more of them, just click the more please at the bottom and you'll get a whole other list. I always like this tool. It makes it seem like fixing these issues is always very easy. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it. There's some really nice ideas here. Donors will be very interested if we help them imagine how good they can look on cool anticipatory action.
Donors just want to look cool, Dorothy.
Well, I know. How do we make them look cool? I'm gonna give you guys just a little bit more time. Thanks so much for joining, Emma.
Dorothy, maybe in interest of keeping it still like roughly to the hour, we should jump to the last step. What do you think? I'm seeing some really cool things here.
Great, let's do it. Yeah. Okay, everyone, you've got 5 seconds to just do your last one. 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay, so now you see the very nice list. Oh, you don't see the list. You see a lot of interesting ideas about how to fix the barriers. So I'm going to ask you to vote them up or down. Vote them up if you think that this is a priority or that this is a good idea. Vote them down if you think this is probably not what we should be doing. And then you can skip at the bottom and you'll get all the ideas that come out. So I'll give you 1 minute to skip through all of these. And we're going to end up with a nice list of priorities at the end, which is going to help us shape the next steps.
Oh, Dorothy, can you share your screen by any chance?
I'm going to share my screen. Sure.
Sana is having a hard time entering.
Sure.
And we'll follow up with everyone after this meeting, and we can find some way to share some of these top ones. So,
can you see this?
Yes.
Great. Here, I'm just going to vote all of them up.
Now we're going to judge your voting, Dorothy.
Yeah, I'm just going to vote all of them up just for the sake of it. I think they're all great. I actually do think they're all great. Okay, guys, 20 seconds. Okay. So 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, I'm not going to count. It sounds like I'm counting for hide and seek. All right. Hopefully you all had a chance to look through them. And show the next screen and you'll see just the list. hopefully, there we go. You can see the list here of what we think are the priorities. Just the first three about multi-stakeholder partnerships to break down silos. The next one was kind of similar, institutional barriers to sharing data. So territoriality, that kind of thing. Developing common goals, visions, data sharing policies. And the third one, which I think was very poetic, we can and must build sunny futures. And someone has changed it to sure, but any solution must not be led by those who created challenges or in the ways that those disasters were created. It's very, so here's a deep note to leave everyone on. So thank you so much for sharing, everyone. We are, yeah, as Rebecca said, we're going to be sharing all the things that we created for this webinar with all of you. I think we have all your emails, but if you want to make sure, just put your names in the chat. And yeah, and we'll be sharing Rebecca's visual notes, and we'll be sharing this list of ideas. Tim wants rain. Yeah, and so we will be sharing all of this, so do stay tuned. And this is not the last that you're hearing of this, because the whole point, or one of the points that we want to move forward after this community conversation is taking this forward and taking this idea, exploring it a little bit deeper with your input. So here's some ideas of where we want to go. There have been suggestions of a paper being written, of global dialogue platform sessions, of testing this out with specific national societies or others who might be interested. So here's some, yeah, kind of floating around some ideas concretely about how we want to bring positive anticipatory action forward. So if you have any ideas or you'd like to contribute to any of the things that I just mentioned, please just tell us in the chat, or yeah, or just reach out to us afterwards. It would be great to start exploring a little bit that this is not just an idea that's kind of we threw out there in the ether and now it's going to float around for a while, but we would like to concretize some of these ideas. So let us know if you have anything specific that you'd like to work on or contribute to, and that we can help with. And yeah, please do write in the chat if you have any ideas. And then I think we're pretty much at the top of the hour. We're 3 minutes past. Maybe just to wrap it up, I'd hand it over to Emma to give us some parting thoughts, and then I'll say goodbye, and then we'll give you the rest of your evenings back. Emma, what did you think of all this?
Interesting that there are so many ideas or already so many thoughts going into this of how really do we start taking advantage of this. I don't want to call it positive anticipatory action, since someone already asked, is there negative anticipatory action? But good to see that there are so many thoughts in process from different quarters about this. I think someone has also mentioned work going on somewhere in Malawi. I think Danish Red Cross also supporting some work. And I think for me, one of the things that would be useful to see is how do we collaborate, how do institutions move this particular piece of work together forward in terms of not separating between even development and humanitarian kind of initiatives. And I would really encourage people to share their thoughts of where can we move this forward. And in the interest of time, if then they could reach us on email or share any thoughts on maybe Skype, because I think most of the people on here are already familiar to the three of us. And I think for me, one of the most interesting things would be to hopefully see next year someone implement a case study of this, because unfortunately, when we started thinking about it this year for Southern Africa, it was a little bit too late. So I would be interested to see someone at least do a case study of this somewhere and share that in the future next year. But we'll keep the conversation going and see if we can build a community. Like the thought that Pablo shared, that do we need to have ambassadors for this, people who are constantly talking about this? I know we barely as humans remember things unless they're repeated, and that's the way I think advertising works. The more you see it, the more you think about it, the more you go for that thing. So if we can think through, do we set sort of ambassadors from across different organizations to push this conversation forward and the like? So that is it from me. Back to you, Dorothy.
I think you're the best ambassador, Emma. All right, everyone, there's two challenges for you. If you like this idea, be an ambassador. And if you have the capacity to try it out, please implement it and try a case study. Let's test this out. On those two challenges, I think this might be time to draw this conversation to a close. Again, Emma, Rebecca, thank you so much for pushing this forward, for bringing this to light. Everyone, thank you for your thoughts, for your ideas, for sharing your inputs. It's highly appreciated, and we hope that this is only the beginning or the continuation of these conversations. Again, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your days.